Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So today, we are honored to have a very esteemed presenter with us. So I am Mohammad Zishan. I am an assistant professor in psychiatry in Rutgers University in US. I am currently a chair of Nishtar Research Council. So me, along with my co-chair, Dr. Baz Riaz, who is co-chair for Nishtar Research Council, along with our current president, Dr. Sadiq Naveed, we welcome our speaker, our students from Nishtar, and all our moderator and co-hosts. So thank you so much for joining. So Nishtar Research Council, from this platform, we have been organizing monthly webinars with the main focus to help our medical students, trainees in Nishtar, how to build, some research, basic research knowledge, and how to develop that culture that we can help our medical students get more involved in research and then have more publication and more presentations. And I really want to thank our president, Dr. Sadiq Naveed, for constantly encouraging and using a lot of resources to continue these activities. So without our due delay, I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Dr. Hamid Hassan. So Dr. Hamid Hassan is a chairman, Department of Physiology, Deputy Controller Examination, member, Board of Medical Education, member, Board of Advanced Studies, member, Board of Academic Curricular Development, member, Board of Research, Innovation and Commercialization, member, Board of Academic Mentorship, member, Academic Council, and proposed editor for upcoming Nishtar Journal of Medical Research. His number of published publications are 12, 7 are already accepted, 9 are submitted for publication, and he's working ongoing on 27 publication. But I think the most amazing thing that, which I really want to emphasize is, how much he is dedicated, committed, and involved in helping and mentoring medical students. My interaction first time with Dr. Hassan was in 2019 when I visited with my professor from Harvard, Dr. Harrison, to Nishtar, and I cannot say enough. When Dr. Harrison met Dr. Hassan, and we went to visit couple of places, and his knowledge and his ability to convey, and then his enthusiasm to teach and mentor medical students, it was very obvious and very contagious that that Dr. Harrison still vividly remembered all those interactions. So I feel we are really lucky to have such an accomplished, such a great mentor at Nishtar who have been helping so many medical students. So without due delay, I feel honored to invite him as a keynote speaker to share his thoughts and then start the presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Hamid Hassan, for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Zishan. I really feel honored and humbled by the introduction which we have extended. And I'd like to welcome all of the young researchers who have joined us in this particular setting from my study. I'll try my level best along with my team of undergrad researchers to make the joinees go through a particular procedure, at the end of which they might be able to have an idea that how exactly they're going to choose a topic for their research, of any research, whether they conduct at the undergrad level or else at the postgrad level, and how to know that it is a good enough topic that at the end of a particular research methodology, they're going to get it published. So for any researcher, whether at the undergrad level or at a postgrad level, the very first question which comes to a researcher's mind is that, what exactly is the research topic? How do we select it? And how exactly do we put it into practice and get it published? So if I just start from the very basic, that for any particular research project, for any particular research idea, it always starts from an observation. You observe something which is happening within your society, and you actually get concerned about something which is affecting the health of humans around you one way or another way. For example, as a medical educationist, I have been observing for the past few years that the psychopsychiatric health of medical students is declining sharply. And I have also been observing that the lifestyle of medical students is rapidly and radically changing. For example, I see that the medical students are spending more and more time sitting in front of their gadget screens. They're consuming lots and lots of junk food. Their nutritional as well as physical status is altering. So one particular day while I'm sitting in the office and reviewing that what exactly is happening in the society, specifically with the kids which I encounter in the field of medicine, and I develop a suspicion that is it a possibility that the changes which are happening within the physical status of the kids is affecting their psychopsychiatric health some way. Uh, so from this particular presumption or assumption, I have two particular courses, one of which can lead me to the development of a viable research project, and other is going to lead me to the development of a research survey. One thing which I need to convey over here is that medical surveys are not very appreciated in the domain of medical publication. I'll tell the reasons a few moments later, but medical researchers are. So how exactly are we going to be sure that this is not a survey, which is usually the job of a sociologist or else maybe a paleontologist? And how is it that we are going to know that this is not a survey, but a research project? So as I said, that one morning I'm sitting in my office and I develop a presumption that perhaps the altering nutritional and the physical status of the medical students is somehow affecting their psychopsychiatric health and is making them perform poorly at the academic front. So from here, I can take two courses. The very first is an easier one that I take a piece of paper and go to a particular class and note that if I've got like 350 students over there, out of those 350 students, these many are males and these many are females. And then I note down that within males and within females, this many or this much amount of population is no obese, and this much amount of female population is obese. And then I start to randomly ask the public over there that whether they feel depressed, whether they feel anxious, whether they think that their psychopsychiatric health is at stake, whether they feel that it is affecting their academia. And I just start noting these particular responses. So at the end of the day, what exactly do I have? I have got certain percentages, I have got certain frequencies. For example, I come to a conclusion that 50% of the class is male, 50% is female, and out of 50% males, 35% have got depression and anxiety, as they have told, and within the females, 40% have got depression and anxiety. And when I come to analyze the academic performance of those who say they have got depression and anxiety, I presume I come to a conclusion that like 34% have got poor academic performance within the males, and like 40% have got poor performance within the females. So I have got a presumption now that the obese people are having poor psychopsychiatric health, and as a result of that, it is affecting their academia. Till this particular level, when I'm projecting my data in terms of frequencies, in terms of percentages, and I have not applied any specific statistical test over there, this particular level at this particular point is equivalent to a medical survey and not a medical research. The other particular method is a bit detailed one, it's a bit more difficult one, and it's a much more methodology mediated. For example, I go to the class and I see that how many of the people are obese and how many of them are non-obese. Then I start not only noting them, I start to calculate their BMI, their weight, their waist-hip ratio also. And then I implement a specific kind of tool which is accepted internationally as a tool of detecting depression or anxiety in better ways, in scientific terms. For example, I implement a particular survey which has got a better specificity, which has got a better sensitivity, and which has got a better Cronbach's alpha value. So at the end of the day, what exactly I have got? I've got scores of depression and anxiety. I calculated the BMI and waist-hip ratio. I've got scores over there also. And then I start noting the percentages which the kids are scoring on the academic front in professional exams. So I've got an other score. When I exactly try to compare these particular scores of the obese people with the non-obese one, I can and apply a particular statistical test over there, I'll come to a conclusion through a particular statistical value that yes, obese people as compared to the non-obese have got higher scores of depression and anxiety, and their academic scores are poorer, which is going to make me prove the particular assumption which I was having as a hypothesis, that perhaps as the BMI and waist hip ratio increase with obesity, it deteriorates the psychopsychiatric health, which is evident by higher scores of depression and anxiety, and it is somehow affecting the academic performance of the students. So at the end of the day, I have got the data not in terms of frequencies, but in terms of p-values, that is probability value, which I have deduced by application of standard statistical test. So instead of just ending it at the level of a survey where I was just projecting the frequencies or percentages, I actually developed a particular methodology in which I developed a particular sort of a population. I developed a comparison in which a population was divided into the affectee and the non-affectee one. And then I applied a particular statistical test, which gave me a particular statistical value on the base of which I was able to project that this actually proves, this significant value actually proves that whatever I was assuming is correct. Once I have deduced a particular statistical value and I want to publish it into a particular journal, I'm just going to go through the guidelines which are extended by that particular journal. I'm going to set those particular findings accordingly in a particular format, and I'm going to submit it. And most likely, because over here, I just didn't end up to the level of survey, I actually followed a particular methodology, implemented very set standard tools, and as a result of that particular thing, was able to deduce standard statistical analysis and standard statistical values of significance. The chances of rejection of a particular research project now are very minimal, and the chances of acceptance are too high. So how exactly we do put a particular medical idea into something which is known as a research work on the ground, and then deduce a particular significant statistical value and put it for publication, is something my undergrad research associates, which are working with me for quite some years now on several projects, are going to make you go through it one by one. This particular session is to be moderated by a very brilliant second year comrade from who's been working with me for the past 2.5 years, let's suppose. And his name is Mr. Hamid Hassan. Is to moderate it. Over to you, Ahmed. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, from my premises for now. And I shall return for the question answer session.
Greetings, fellow researchers. I sincerely hope that you're all in high spirits. Thank you for joining. We hope to make the best out of your time. So make sure you pay heed. We are going to be precise and brief, but if you find it too taxing, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We will answer them towards the end of the session. A brief introduction of myself. I am Hamid Hassan, and I am in my sophomore year of medical school. And I'm currently working on a research project under Dr. Hamid Hassan. Moving on, the first step towards writing a quality research paper is the selection of its topic. And it is not as simple as it sounds. So to simplify it, I would like to invite Mr. Mohammed Ahmed to brief you on simplistic terms on topic selection and feasibility. He's my very talented and efficient colleague. The rest you can see for yourself. Mr. Ahmed, over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Ahmed, and hello, everyone. Hope you will be doing great. So today I'll be talking about the topic selection and its feasibility for the research work. And as we are having some beginners here, so before moving to our main discussion, I would like to brief some basic steps for starting a research work. The first thing is writing a synopsis, which includes summary, introduction, and methodology for conducting the research. And once you're done with the synopsis thing, the next step is the approval from the relevant ERC body of the university. And after that, you move toward the data collection, article writing, and publication, which will be told by the colleagues further in the sitting. Okay, so let's move to our main topic. Choosing a topic is the most challenging and crucial step before you start any research work. If you don't choose a topic wisely, you will end up leaving the whole project altogether. So basically, topic is selected as per the problems which are existing within our society. Cutting short, I'm going to state a few points which are going to help you choose a viable topic for your research. The number one is to choose a topic from the area of your interest. As you know, working and learning is easier when it hits your points of interest. Number two, uh, number two is the background study or the literature review. When you look into a vast ocean of literature relevant to your study, using Google Scholar or any other search engine, it helps you devise a viable study design for your study, which has minimum possibility of confounding factors. Next, coming to the final step, which is limiting a vast topic to a specific aspect, to research and analyze it through several methods so that it could stay feasible and doable within our limited resources. Okay, let's have an example. Like I observe that there are more psychiatric problems among our obese students. I developed a hypothesis that body mass index and waist hip ratio are associated with the development of depression and anxiety within the medical students, which in turn affect their academic performance. And from now on, my colleagues are going to use this particular proposed hypothesis to guide you during the several steps of the research work. The first step is to develop a viable hypothesis and to calculate a viable sample size for the study, which is going to be told by the moderator himself. So I would like to end the discussion by giving the platform to Mr. Moderator. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Ahmed.
Thank you, Ahmed. Moving on, the next step in line is to, after finalizing the topic of your research, is devising a hypothesis of your and planning out a methodology for your research. I will be explaining that myself along with a brief overview of sample size calculation. To make things clear, I will use the same proposal as you can see on your screens. It was introduced to you by our previous panelists. So moving on, our first element of discussion is hypothesis. So a hypothesis is basically the basic idea of your research paper. It is the assumption that you present to correlate all the factors that have been discussed in your topic selection. It is the basic idea that your research shall approve or disapprove. In fact, it is the most crucial part of your research because it lays the foundation on which you have to build your research on. So there are certain things that should be present in your hypothesis. It should explain the expected outcome of your research, and it should be clear, testable, and measurable. Now, this means that it should contain all the parameters that you can evaluate numerically. It should be logically appealing. So as I told you that it's an assumption that your research approves or disapproves, it's not merely an assumption. I mean, you have to do vast literature search. You have to look into the physiology of all the mechanisms that relate to the parameters that you're discussing in your topic. So you have to be really logical about it. And it's not merely an assumption, but in fact, it should be backed up by scientific, psychological, and physiological backgrounds. So then your hypothesis can add on to some concept that already exists or defy it. However, it should at all times be logical. Let me clarify it with the example that has been provided to you. So the topic I introduced before, the hypothesis that we presented for it is in front of you right now. And as you can see, the parameters we're discussing are obesity, depression, anxiety, and academic performance. Now we had to establish a relation between all these parameters. So the relation that we established was that obesity is directly related to depression and anxiety and inversely correlated with academic performance. Now, this is not merely a statement. This is not merely an assumption. There was a strong biological background to it, which is in front of you right now. Okay, so as we are aware that obesity results in the derangement of certain neurological and hormonal systems, that derangement of neurological and hormonal systems further downregulate the release of certain neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters, on the other hand, give you a feeling of well-being, give the feeling of well-being in an otherwise non-obese individual. However, because obesity has downregulated the release of these neurotransmitters, it can result in certain neuropsychiatric disorders such as depression and anxiety. And these, on the other hand, can hamper your academic performance. So this was about hypothesis. Now, our next step of discussion after formulating a logical hypothesis is to lay out a plan of action for our research, which is the methodology. I won't be explaining methodology in detail. However, there is an aspect of methodology that I'll be elaborating, and that is sample size calculation. So sample size calculation is the first step towards data collection, which is a part of your methodology. So a point to ponder. How many people exactly are you going to subject to the data collection procedure? How many people are you going to include in your study? That exact number is known as the sample size of your study. And it can be calculated in certain ways, but the most common way that we use is through the software Sample Size Determination in Health Studies, a practical manual issued by WHO Geneva. So now I'll walk you through the entire steps to calculate the sample size. So the first step towards the calculation of your sample size is literature search. Now, by literature search, I mean you have to find articles that are fairly similar to yours. And once you have found them, their study design should match yours. And once it matches, you have to figure out what tools they use, what questionnaires they incorporate. And if they're similar, then that's the go-to question. That's the go-to article that you're searching for. Once you have found such an article, you extract the mean and standard deviation values given in the results of certain groups of their study, and you enter them in the software that I introduced to you before. And once you've done that, you get the sample size, and when you get the sample size, you apply it to all the groups of your study. However, I think I need to elaborate on that. So okay, so here in front of you is an article. This is the article that we found for our sample size calculation. Physical activity in depressed and non-depressed patients with obesity. It is fairly similar to our topic that was introduced to you before. Now, what we did was, this was a credible article. We went to its results. As you can see, in front of you are two groups, non-depressed patients with obesity and patients with both obesity and depression. Then there is a common tool that they were using, even a questionnaire, Beck Depression Inventory, and the BMI. BMI is basically a marker of your obesity, so they were using BMI. As you can see, the BMI values were given for the both groups, mean and standard deviation values. The mean deviation value here is 43.73, and the standard deviation for the first group is 7.412. On the other hand, the second group, the mean deviation value that we got was 47.04. Now we entered all these values in the software that I mentioned before. Here in front of you are those values that we just found. And the sample size we calculated was 53, which means that for each group of our study, we need 53 people to fill in. We need 53 responses, we need 53 people for data collection. So in other words, the sample size is basically making your research plausible. It should be big enough to make your research plausible, but it should not be too big, or else your data collection procedure will become too hectic. So you have to find a middle way. Moving on, after the sample size calculation, we have calculated the exact number of participants that we need. So it's time to figure out what kind of people we need, what kind of population we need to include in our study. For that, we have Mr. Hamid Hassan with us, who will brief you on standardization of population. Mr. Moaz, over to you.
Thank you, Hamid. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing good. So like Hamid told you, you need 53 people to conduct this whole research, right? Now you have hundreds of people around you, but you can't go around and select any random 53, you see? So the whole process of knowing which criterion to use to select those specific 53 people is known as standardization of the public, and that is what I'm going to take you through. First of all, you need to know that there have to be two groups. One is your test group and second is your control group. Both the groups must have all the features same. That is the first thing about your standardization. The only variable that is different in between both those groups is obesity, as your hypothesis states here. So Now that you have selected those both two groups and you know both of them have to have 53 people, the next step is to know which people to include, that is your inclusion criteria, and which people to exclude. Your inclusion criteria is to select those people that will help you go through, improve your research. And your exclusion criteria will remove all of your confounders. So let's see here, as in this example, your inclusion criteria is set to include people that had a BMI of, let's say, less than 23, have a specific age and everything. So now these, as you go through this, you need to know that the inclusion and exclusion criteria is exactly the same for both groups except your one variable being tested. All of the other factors have to be same. Now, why do we remove these factors and what are confounders? You see, confounder is any other factor that might have an effect on your result. For example, here, you know that obesity is not the only thing that can affect your psychiatric health. There are also many other factors. There can be a genetic predisposition to psychiatric disorders. You can have a family history. You can even have an abusive background that gives you psychiatric disorders, right? So your inclusion and exclusion criteria must be based on such a way that any other factor that might help affect your psychiatric health must be removed. That is your first and most foremost preference. Then you go on to say that there might be so many other factors that affect your psychiatric health, but we are yet not aware of them, and you still have to remove them, right? And you're not even aware of them. So how do you remove those confounders? Because they'll still affect your result. For that, we know that like I said before, except obesity, nothing else should be same in both. Everything else should be same in both your groups. So any other criteria or any other factor that might be affecting your psychiatric health is evenly distributed in both the groups. Hence, it cannot affect your result. So that is how you are going to standardize your public, and hopefully this will give you the right results. Thank you for listening to me. Over to you, Ahmed.
Thank you, Moz. Okay, so now we have decided on the number of people we need. We have decided the kind of people we need. Now it is essential to numerically evaluate all the parameters that we're considering for our study based on the population. So what were the parameters? Let's go through them again: obesity, anxiety, depression, and academic performance. So we have Mr. Mohammed Usmle with us to explain the entire data collection procedure and to statistically evaluate the data we have gathered. Over to you, Usmle.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. So once we have formulated a hypothesis, calculated a viable sample size, chosen a population and standardized it, it is now time to go into the field and collect our relevant data, or simply put, the process of data collection. Data collection simply means to acquire and compile relevant information of the variables of interest in a systematic and scientific fashion, which enables one to test our hypotheses and evaluate results. So keeping our proposed hypothesis in mind, which states that obesity, young medical students who are more obese will have worse psychopsychiatric health and will perform poorly in their academic performance. We need to remember three important parameters, as Ahmed said, which include parameters which can judge obesity, parameters which can judge psychopsychiatric health, and parameters which can judge academic performance. So whenever you're going to test any parameter on any ground, it has to be first standardized by a viable health organization, for example, WHO. So keeping our parameters in mind, WHO defines obesity for males as one having a BMI of more than 24.9 and a WHR of more than 0.9. And for females as one having a BMI of more than 24.9 and a WHR of 0.8. So we need to obtain the WHR BMI of the South Asian subjects because these are the values which we will use with the cutoffs that have been provided by the WHO. Also, we need to obtain a degree of the psychopsychiatric health in a gradable way. And for this, we need certain tools, which are the common ones which are popular in contemporary researchers include questionnaires, interviews, investigation of documents and reports, etc., which project the degree of psychopsychiatric health in a gradable or calculable way. Apart from that, we also require the academic scores of the young medical students, which are usually indicated by the latest entrance examination of a particular session when they come into medicine. So going into the field, we need, summarizing all of this, we need three things. For example, the WHR and BMI of our young medical students, the scores of psychopsychiatric health, which in this instance are, for example, graded by the Aga Khan Medical Depression and Anxiety Scale and the Beck's Depression Anxiety Inventory. And apart from that, we also need the latest entrance examination results. So these are the three things that we need to obtain our data. So once this process is completed, the data collection process is completed, we move on to apply the standardized statistical test as dictated by our study design. So keeping in mind our proposal, the proposal which states that what we need to do in a proposal is that we need to compare the groups of obesity and sorry. Okay, so as well as so for example, we need to compare the scores of psychopsychiatric health and as well as the academic scores of our obese young medical students with the control group. So these are the two things we need to compare in our statistical tests. So we need to apply viable and particular statistical tests, which for example, in this instance, will be the T or U test, depending on the normality distribution of our data. So if we do find, after applying these tests, that the obese people have higher scores of depression, anxiety, and lower scores of academic performance, our hypothesis stands proven. If these things are proven, and these are scientifically proven, in fact, because we have chosen a viable sample size. We have applied standardized tools and standardized statistical tests, which have helped us standardize the whole process. And we have also reduced the number of confounders, which could have reduced the reliability of our whole project. So finally, once we're done with all of this, we need to project our results in scientific writing in a medical journal, the process which will be explained by the next speaker, Mr. Abdullah. Thank you so much, and over to you, Mr. Ahmed.
Thank you so much, Usmle. So far, we have decided on a feasible topic. We have suggested a logical hypothesis. We have planned out a viable research methodology and have selected an appropriate population and have gathered all the indices we need to prove or disprove our hypothesis and have also statistically evaluated those indices. Now, we need to make sense out of this entire jumble of information by writing a paper. For article writing and publication, we have Mr. Mohammed Abdullah with us. He has the privilege of being the team leader of the team that first published their article under the supervision of Dr. Hamid Hassan. Over to you, Abdullah.
Thank you so much, Hamid. Well, hello, everyone. As I am here to brief you about article writing and the role of topic selection in article writing. So for that particular thing, it is only possible if we have gone through the steps mentioned throughout this webinar. First of all, we have to develop a hypothesis, and then we move on to the sample size collection, calculation, and the methodology, and then we collect the required data. And when I say the required data, it means the data which is necessary to prove or disprove our hypothesis. As in our proposal, we collected the values of body mass index, waist to ratio, and scores of depression, anxiety, academic scores. So it is only after this, when you put these values in the SPSS, which is the software for statistical analysis, and you get some results. So when we get the results, they indicate whether the hypothesis which has been formulated by us is proved or disproved. So as in our proposal, we'd expect results which suggest that obesity is directly related to the psychiatric indices and inversely with the academic scores. So if Mr. Moderator can bring the next slide to you. you can see on the screen that the tables we would get. So is the slide visible? So yes. In the table, as you see, we have a table on the left. In this table, we have compared the two groups, the group 1 and group 2. In group, we had non-obese. Group 1, we would have non-obese subjects, and in group 2, we would have obese subjects. So, and in the tables on the right side of the screen, we have the correlation. So, and if we move to the next slide, we would see the graph. Mr. Moderator. Yes, we will see the graph, and it is a graph of correlation. It implies that whenever we are writing an article and we have to write a good result section, we have to put some tables and some graphs which represent our data. And after the result section has been written, next we put on the results in the discussion. And in the discussion, as Dr. Hamid mentioned, you need to justify the results, and for that particular purpose, you require help of contemporary research. For example, in my proposal, I have found after a statistical analysis that obese people have worse psychiatric indices and poor academic performance. So since I know that obesity being a pro-inflammatory condition is going to disrupt serotonin levels, and this is going to put these people into psychopsychiatric disorders, and once these disorders develop, you are going to develop concentration problems and sleep quality disturbances, as Ahmed mentioned. So when you try to search this particular fact, you reach to the conclusion that many other fellow researchers have been projecting the same study designs and very similar data. So you can justify your hypothesis, you can justify what you have developed through references from contemporary literature, and this is very important to come up with a very good discussion. So in summary, when you are to complete an article, there are 5 components. Number one is abstract, which is usually the summary of the whole project. So you can write it when you have written the whole article. An introduction, which introduces your scientific parameters, and Maz explained that. Sorry, Ahmed. And a viable methodology in standardization, which Maz explained. And you also have to put the statistical analysis in that, which Usmle explained. And then the results and discussion section, which is also based on the referencing from the contemporary literature, as I just said. So when you have completed this, now you send it for the submission to a journal, and it is, if you have formulated it in the way we suggested, like a set standard, a standard methodology, standard sample size, very standard statistical analysis. So there are very few chances of fish rejection at any end, uh, in whichever journal you send it. But I would recommend that the peer review series is however challenging. So you should be prepared for that. And if you go through your article, if you work on your article like we suggested, then that is very obvious that you will be prepared for. And one thing which is very important is that your article should be adding value to scientific literature and comment. It should not be a simple like. It should not be something like that is not doing any good to society. As in our proposal, we took obesity and we took depression. These two are very common factors in South Asian public, and then we related these two factors so that we can develop that if you are obese, you can develop obesity. So if you're obese, I'm sorry, if you're obese, you can develop depression. So if you want to avoid depression, you should overcome your obesity. So that is a very important fact. So I think that is enough to establish that the whole process of article writing and publication. I would like to end my section by extending thanks to the audience for bearing with me. But before I leave, with the distinguished permission of a mentor, Dr. Hamid Hassan, I am very happy to break this news that this proposal, which we presented as hypothetical, has been worked on by my very competent team members. I would like to mention their names: Ms. Afsan Asir, Ms. Amna Mahmood, Ms. Maria Siddiqui, and Ms. Navira Ayub, and obviously me. And it has been accepted for publication, as you see on your screen, by Pakistan Journal of Physiology. And I'm proud to announce that this particular team becomes the first undergraduate one published under the supervision of Dr. Ahmed. And it also, and I would also like to say that it also proves that all the information that we presented in this webinar, which is presented by my very connected colleague, Mr. Muhammad Ahmed, Mr. Ahmed Khan, Mr. Muzammil, and Mr. Muazzam Khan, is right. As you see that we have been through this setup, and it is a publication. So that's enough from my side. Thank you very much, Al. I would like to return the mic to my mentor, Dr. Hamid Hassan, to extend the closing remarks before the first time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my undergraduate researchers. I like to congratulate for doing a commendable job over here. And as a summary, I'd like to extend the closing remarks, telling that you see that when I started, I told you that we always start with an observation and we develop an assumption. So I assumed that as the undergrad students become obese and their physical health is being affected, their psychopsychiatric health is being affected also. And as a result of that, they're performing poorly on the academic front. So if I had chosen to present my collected data from any particular class, and had limited it to just frequencies and percentages, it would not have been counted for a research project and a research article and was most likely to be rejected when it had to go into publication. However, if you do see that I developed a viable hypothesis, and then I developed a viable sample size through standard procedures, and then I implemented standard tools to evolve a standard methodology and grouping, and then I actually implied the proper and correct statistical test as per study design and developed a viable value. And then I followed the guidelines, which was extended by a particular journal to present that data into an articles format. It was very highly unlikely to be rejected. However, if I had not found that, I had not followed a particular research project in a particular way, a particular methodology, a particular standard tools and particular standard statistical analysis, and I had just presented the data in a very vague and ambiguous forms, it was very likely to be rejected. So for all those undergrad students who are over here, if you want to conduct a research project, it is very highly important that you stay connected to your mentor who guides you through each and every particular step for formulating a particular standard hypothesis, standard methodology, standard sample size, standard inclusion and exclusion criteria, standard data collection, and standard statistical analysis, and then is able to guide you through the guidelines which are extended by a particular journal, so that the end of this particular venture of like 6 months, 8 months, or 1 year, depending upon your sample size, your resources, and your dedication, you should be able to publish an article which is accepted by a journal of repute. So with these particular closing remarks and a very warm thank you to both Dr. Zishan and to my undergrad researchers, I like to extend the mic back to Mr. Ahmed Ali Khan, who's the moderator, who's going to extend it to Dr. Zishan, I guess. So over from me, and I'm open to the answer question sessions after this.
That's it, folks. I thank all the panelists for dedicating their time and energies, and you people who joined us today and were with us. So thank you so much for making this possible. And now we are over to Dr. Zishan to host the question and answer session.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, and thank you so much, Dr. Hamid Hassan, and everyone who presented.
I'm not able to listen.
Are you able to hear me, sir, now?
Yes, I am here.
Yeah,
I'm here,
so,
Dr. Zishan.
yeah, so really grateful for such a step-by-step approach in a very simple, with very practical tips. And also, I think very encouraging, because one thing which I see a lot, both at Nishtar and other places, where there are people who don't have a lot of experience, in research. So research process can be daunting, can be very, what we call it in I'm not good enough. And showing this, having your undergrad presenting, showing how did you, synthesize that hypothesis, how you use some standardized technique for sample size, and then, data gathering, and then presenting in a very scientific way to the point that, that it got accepted. So congratulations to the team, but also, that it is very encouraging and motivating for other undergrad medical students, both at Nishtar and I hope other institutions, to see that as you, Dr. Hassan mentioned, is having a good mentorship, keeping close contact with them, not losing hope, and keep trying and open to learn. I think those are all these things, especially when you are in that journey to learn some research and something that you may not good at. And just one, one experience, I just want to briefly share that whenever we are trying to build a new skill, like in this research, so when we are trying to learn, like for example, you may be you may be a top scorer in your FSC exam, you may be a top scorer in your MBBS exam, and now you watched this wonderful webinar, you learned from these colleagues, and now you said, okay, I also need to learn research, and you start learning research, but it's a slow process. So what many times happen is students, trainees who start comparing our performance in research, a skill that we are still learning, to our performance to a skill that we are really good at, like getting good scores, getting good results. So many times that cause frustration and making you feel that maybe you are not good enough in research. But actually it's not about the good enough. It's just that you don't have the skills yet. And that's why you are seeing this slowing of the process. You are seeing this frustration. You are seeing in your body this kind of boredom and tired, and I don't know if I should do it. Should I just go to the reading room and read more 2 or 3 more chapter? Why to waste this thing that is taking so much time? So yeah, so just to highlight, this is a slow process, and I think especially for Nishtar, I think it's a really blessing to have a mentor, who is a lot of comments that I'm hearing from students that he's not Dr. Hamid Hassan is not only as a teacher, as a mentor, but is very caring and very invested in student learning. So thank you again, sir, for your commitment and dedication. So with that,
Pleasure indeed.
yeah, thank you, of course. So with that, I would like we can have question answers. Either you can put it in the chat, or if we want to have if we stop sharing the screen, and we can have the if you want to raise your hand and ask the question directly from sir. Either way is fine. Okay, so let me just read what I have here, and please don't feel silly. That these are silly questions. These are simple questions. We are asking from Dr. Hamid Hassan, what will he think? What will Nishtar Research Council think that I post this? So nothing is silly. That's why we are organizing this, this session, so that you can ask this question in a very open and a friendly manner. So one question is, let me just see. Okay, so the first question that I'm seeing is from Nizra Amjad. Where are we supposed to look whether our ideas, hypotheses have already been researched upon, like databases? Or are we supposed to change it or modify it if it has been done already? Yes, sir, Dr. Hassan.
All right. As I told you in the very beginning, that whenever you do note something and you assume something that this is happening, for example, I did go through a particular observation that obese medical students were having poor psychiatric health. So I just go into a search engine and I put certain keywords over there, that is obesity, anxiety, depression, medical students. And it is going to give me a number of articles which are very similar to the assumption which I've already made. And if I do get several of the articles which are very similar to my assumption, then I have to filter it to see that whether this has been done in a population which is consistent of my own native ethnicity, or which is consistent of a population which is consistent of my very native background and everything. So you will come to see that very few of the articles would have been commenting on it, and not exactly the way you have been trying to assume, or you are trying to put your assumption into practice. So the trick is that whenever you come to a presumption, you need to add up a few of the parameters in such a way that they stay similar to the greater context, but still are able to add just a millimeter of something to the greater context of the medical knowledge. For example, let's suppose that you assume that the obese people are having more psychiatric disorders. Just assume that someone has calculated obesity in terms of BMI. You are at total liberty to calculate the obesity in terms of waist-hip ratio, in terms of waist circumference, and hip circumference, in terms of waist to height ratio. So the people might have used the same assumption, but might have incorporated different tools. Just change the tools, and you're going to have a totally new research project. Just change a parameter, add a parameter to whatever has already been done, and you have a new particular project. So the literature on scene and available contemporary literature is something which is going to give you the hint whether this has been already done or not. And once you have chosen a particular project, then you need to put it into words in which you just not copy and paste. You have to put it into your own wording and into your own language. And whenever it is going to go through plagiarism software, you're going to most likely evade the terminology of plagiarism, and you have a new project over there. Over to Dr. Zishan.
Thank you. And I think that's also, one thing I also highlight here, the role of a mentor. So
Yes,
because, sometimes, these research are very new concepts. So rather than, you are putting all those things, finding the database, and you want to show that you are master, and in getting that mastery, you may spend months to figure out that answer. So it's good to reach out to, your senior, your medical student, even if that medical student is a junior to you, but has more experience, just reaching out to them. What I have found is even, in my career, asking, people who have more experience can save you a lot of time. But definitely you have to put efforts. They are not going to do work for you. But I think keep in touch with them very closely. So
and I like to second this particular thing because mentorship is very important. As a novice, you cannot be expected to be expert at something which we're just starting. And a connection, a positive connection with a particular mentor who's got expertise is of absolute importance. A mentor is who's going to guide you. For example, when I started with all these particular kids, they didn't even know how to search or hunt an article, a particular reference. But over here, in like say one year, 1.5 years of continuous sessions with me, continuous guidance, they're not only guiding their juniors, they're even guiding their seniors and postgrads. They are fully fledged now trained in research methodology that they can create and develop the research projects for the postgrads, also can calculate the sample sizes for them, and can even write the basic structure for them so that they can carry out further in their field. So of course, there is supposed to be a continuous connectivity between a novice and a mentor. That is of absolute importance.
Thank you. And thank you, sir, providing for that platform, that and a role model as well, where they can see you and then share the same knowledge with others. Okay. So the next question is from Hafsa Ghulam Fatma. So the question is team necessary for research in health sector, or an individual can also do it under a mentor?
Yes, of course, a team is absolutely essential. When we started our very first research projects, when we were novices ourselves, we thought that we are too much of a know-it-all and we can do it on ourselves. But when we started to work in field, we came to a conclusion that we or no one can on his or her own be able to go through a research work, because it is not only the search which you're doing across your screens, it is not only the connection which you are having with the mentor. It depends on your communication skills also. You need to go into the public, you need to go into the society, you need to convince the people to give you certain kind of data, whether it is invasive or non-invasive, that is a totally different thing. But you need to have communication skills, you need to have confidence to go into the society. You need to have the confidence to collect the data and then the sustenance to put it into statistical terms. And then you should have the confidence and the bearability that if it initially gets rejected somewhere, or a peer, when he or she reviews it, rejects it or proposes a major revision of the thing which we have just submitted to a particular journal, you should have the sustainability to actually stand this particular event which has taken place, review it, review your mistakes with lots of sustenance and resubmit it so that you could get published. So of course, a single person can't do that. You require the support. And it is supposed to be a conducive team. You should have the members on the team which are able to support you when you are low, to whom you are able to support when they're low. And the team has to have very dedicated connection with the mentor also, also a very dedicated connection to the project also. And that is how at the end of this particular venture of 1 year, 1.5 years, depending upon the duration, you will be able to publish it. So team is absolutely important. You cannot do it on your own.
No, thank you. And I completely echo. And I think in psychology, what we call it a brain saboteur, where we call it this perfection saboteur, where, your brain just make you feel, unless you will do all those things, it's not going to happen. And the other thing is not, that you are not willing to do, is actually your anxiety, sometimes your fear of thinking that, exposing yourself, telling other people that you may not know these things. And another, a silly and a funny, but real, which many times I have come across, that people may think that, maybe, other people may not like your idea, or, they may say that, this is, not an doable idea. So those are all, those thoughts. So I really encourage, to discuss with the team, discuss with the mentor, definitely not with everyone, but if someone you trust, someone who has experience, and someone who has, who is good, in providing mentorship, it's good to share your thoughts and work as a team. And then the next question from Nizra Amjad, what is ERC?
ERC is Ethical Review Committee. It is at particular places, at some places also known as IRB, Institute Review Board. So this particular committee of the local institute is where you put your research project for evaluation. They evaluate that it is a medical project. It is not in conflict with the basic ideas of medicine. It is not in conflict with the religio-cultural ideas also, because in certain societies, certain things are not acceptable. And that it hasn't got any breach of the medical ethics. For example, if you propose that you want to inject a particular sort of a drug whose authenticity is yet not validated by the contemporary literature, there's an ethical breach. That what if something happens to the patient to which you are injecting this particular drug? How are you going to make sure that this is not going to be harmful to the general health of the public? So the committee which is sitting over there, that committee actually is going to analyze that particular project on ethical grounds, on medical ethical grounds, on socio-cultural, on religio-cultural grounds, and is going to give you the approval that, all right, fine, this seems to be a fine project. This is going to give us viable medical knowledge or information at the end of this particular project, which can add to the greater good of humanity. And after that particular certificate, which you can get, you are going to go into the project. Before or without getting that particular certificate from the ERC or IRB, you will not be able to conduct the project. And even if you do, you are not going to be published, because the certificate is required for its publication whenever you're going to publish it somewhere. Sometimes the conflicts arise. For example, someone raises a question that this stands in conflict with the medical ideas, with the medical ethics, and how were you able to conduct it? So in response to that, you can present that particular certificate that it has been approved by an institute, and that institute has a committee which has the responsibility of approving it. So it helps you stand with your project in times of in difficult times, whenever a very difficult question is raised on its viability and its on presentability. Every institute, every particular university, every particular college has got it. And whenever a research project is to be conducted, this approval is necessary. Dr. Zishan.
Thank you so much. And before I go to the next question, I know I just see Dr. Fateh Shahzad. I think I see him on mute. So Dr. Fateh Shahzad is is a very well-known physician. I think he's a graduate from King Edward. We have been helping a lot in US, especially our young physician committee. It's mostly with the visa-related issues. So I just want to know if, Fateh, do you have any question for us? I saw you are on mute.
But I was listening to you all, and thank you for arranging this seminar.
No, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fateh Shahzad. I mean, he is doing an amazing job for helping so many, people, who applicants, especially who are coming to US with the visa issues. So thank you, Fateh, for joining us. So let's go to the next question. Next question is from Iman Rauf. So for an undergrad, considering the fact that we have limited resources, what topic of research do you think we should look into?
Yes, this is a very important question, which we elaborated when we were going through a very brief presentation also. that whenever you choose a topic, you need to keep your resources in mind. For example, we chose a topic over here in which we did not require too much of an invasive techniques. We did not require blood samples, we did not require the urine samples, we did not require the mucous membranes, we did not require the genetic material, and it was just based on certain questionnaires whose validity and specificity was already established. For the undergrads, I would prefer that they should remain with a very simple thing so that they do not face the issue of resources. For example, if you need a simple CBC or complete blood count or complete blood picture, it is going to cost you like 70 or 80 rupees. So when it till it is on to the level of CBC, that is quite fine. That would be very manageable within your resources. You need the blood glucose in a certain instance, that is also very manageable. You need a complete urine picture, that is also very manageable. But if you want to go for the cultures, if you want to go to the genetic deciphering of the cell count which we are having, you want to have specific kind of specificity of a culture, that is going to cost you too much of the resources. So apart from that, you also need to keep in mind that what kind of team you have got, whether you have got an adequate amount of team who can go after the patients, who can keep the other academic and domestic activities at stake and stay committed to that particular collection of the samples and the data. So you need to keep the human resources as well as the financial resources in mind, and then come up with a topic which is dependent on too less of the resources which at undergrad level specifically you can manage. Of course, there are several fora which can fund your researches even at the undergrad level, but you need to have a mentor, a postgrad or a specialist on board with you. But it is usually in the postgrad where you can get the funds and the grants more easily. So as far as you are at the undergrad level, it is better to stick to very simpler forms of research to which not many resources are required. For example, if I just tell you that okay, the total amount of resources which we spent on the project, which has just been accepted for the publication, was 4,500 rupees. It was not more than that. We had just required certain stationery, we had just required certain prints, and after that we were able to collect the data. So it is my advice to the undergrad researchers to kindly keep your resources physical as well as financial in mind before you devise a project, because it is a possibility if it is too costly, it is going to go beyond your budget and is most likely to lead you to close dale. Usually at undergrad level, we do not get the grant. So of course, that is an issue. Over to you, Dr. Zishan.
No, thank you so much. I think very well. You mentioned a really good point of your resources and the financial budget. And the other thing, I also want to highlight, sometime, especially undergrad students and even the grad, in the beginning of, people want to do something that is very new, very fancy, very famous. And sometimes people ask, what is the current trend? What kind of research has been happening? So it's not about that, it's what you like, and what, Dr. Hamid Hassan mentioned, what are the resources, what are the financial, and what topics, and a topic can be, pretty simple. But, if you like it, you have the resources, you have a good team, you can, create a good hypothesis and get a good, study out of it. So yeah, being mindful about all those factors.
And I like to add something over here, that there are so many students at the undergrad level who come to me and who ask me, this is very simple thing. Why don't we go for the genetic studies? Why don't we go for the sampling, which requires more invasive techniques? And I tell them that at undergrad level, the basic purpose of a research work is to make yourself very familiar with the research methodology and to learn to how to devise a research project so that once you are a postgrad, and you are able to apply to a grant, you do devise such perfect and pristine projects that you're able to get the grants and are able to do the novel things. So of course you will be able to do the novel things at certain stage of your life, but perhaps this is not that particular time. At this time, you need to learn more about the methodology, and at later stage, you can put it into practice.
No, I agree. I think this daily effort of doing, and yeah, I think that is very important, rather than just focusing on what the end goal and how to achieve. This daily process of working hard, learning these skills, and the outcome result will automatically come, which means the publication, which means the funding, which means the grant. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So next question is coming from Asrar Ali. So how can we approach you, sir, as our mentor? And if we have a team or not? As students of BS Nutrition in Nishtar, who study relevant subjects like statistics with general medicine and nutrition also. Many students are already interested in research, just need proper guidance and a mentor like you.
All right. Since you're already at the Nishtarian premises, I'd like you to visit sometime my office and see a particular note which is placed on the door of my office. It very clearly states that this is a public office and you need not to knock or to take permission to enter this particular office. Just enter and tell me what you need. And if I'm busy, have my apologies and sit while I get free. And as soon as I get free from my already happening indulgence, I'll get to you and shall be of any service. So there is no particular formal process of meeting me. Just drop by my office. You're always welcome.
No, thank you so much for always being so approachable, and willing to help, so many other, especially, I agree, especially if they're in Nishtar premises, pretty easy to reach out to you directly. Thank you. So next question is from Hafsa Ghulam Fatma. How to get a strong grip on statistical part, like applying statistical test and analyzing of research, because as a medical student, generally we are not very good at statistics and mathematics.
All right. Once again, that is a very important question. Once again, this brings forward the importance of a very strong mentor who not only knows that what is the exact pros and cons of a research methodology, but has a very strong grip on the statistical analysis also. Whenever we start something, of course, it is quite difficult in the beginning. But trust me, that within a few weeks, if you just put a very viable effort into it, you will be able to do very viable statistical analysis. For example, if I just tell you that these 5 gentlemen who are heading their own teams at Nishtar, they started their research work in their first years. We got delayed because of the COVID pandemic for approximately 1 year because the classes were not happening, the people were not dropping on the premises, and they restarted at the end of their second year. By the end of that particular 1 year with which they were with me, they were not only familiar, very familiar with the statistical patterns, the statistical software, the statistical test that is going to be applicable to a specific sort of a research work, but they're now doing it themselves. They are calculating the sample sizes themselves. They're collecting the data and entering that on statistical software themselves. They're analyzing that software themselves. They are deciphering the values themselves. So if they can do that, I hope that anyone else can do that, provided there is a strong mentor to which you are connected and who's able to guide you step by step through statistical analysis. Exactly like any other medical skill, like writing a prescription, like doing a surgery, like doing a procedure, like teaching. This is also a medical skill, and it can't be learned unless and until you're connected to a particular strong mentor. G. Dr. Shah.
No, thank you so much. And one thing we can share, at a Nishtar Research Council level, that Dr. Arbaz Riaz and I and our team, we are also working on compiling some courses on basic research, some statistical analysis, and compiling the list of those courses, and see if we can make it available, especially to our Nishtar medical students. It's still work in progress, but hopefully. But again, everything comes step by step. You have to, and again, you work with the local mentors and then see which course is applicable to you. And then there is no comparison of the hands-on experience. You actually learn when you do it. Okay, so those are the questions I have so far in the chat. Let me see. And I really appreciate your time. I know we are a little bit over than an hour, and
I'm rather humbled.
Thank you. And because I believe many times the question and answer session have been very helpful. So really appreciate you are extending more time than we requested. So any other question from anyone? You can raise your hand. You can post it in the chat. So Marwa Asif raised her hand. Please go ahead, Marwa.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Ji, please.
I just wanted to appreciate the efforts all of you have put in, Sir Hamid, my colleagues, everyone for this webinar. And as an Nistarian, I consider myself very lucky to have him as a research mentor, a teacher, and more as a fatherly figure. And thank you so much.
Very sorry to interrupt you, Mava, but I think that my advertisement can rest for now. That can happen on premises. Thank you for that,
So
however.
it's not an
And you very well
advertisement.
know that I do not like to be advertised.
Yeah, but I can say these are definitely not the advertisement. These are just fact and token of appreciation. Yes, Nishtar Premises is pretty used to all those, but we also need to hear in US as well, because you're doing a really great job. So thank you. Let me see. Anyone else?
Do we have here with us Dr. Zishan?
Okay, so I check the chat. Okay, so I think, we again, thank you again so much, Dr. Hamid Hassan and your team, and congratulations for all of the students for, learning so much in such a short period of time. I think one question I just got, kindly suggest some books to understand thorough process of research.
To be honest, there are none. You would find dozens and dozens and dozens of research books, but trust me, this is a skill which you learn from your mentor. You cannot learn online. You can't learn from the books. This is a skill which is directly transferred from a human to another human, specifically if the human is motivated to transfer the skill. You would not be able to have the skills from the conferences, from the webinars, or from books. That is very highly unlikely.
And as I said, that I echo, especially with, with our resources and with our limited time, it's important to work closely with a mentor and,
Yes.
learn based on what we have. And again, another question just popped up is from Isra Amjad. What are different types of researches?
When it comes to the medical research, we usually conduct two kind of medical study designs. Either they are cross-sectional or else they are cohort. Cross-sectional is that case which is based on a single time observation in a specific kind of public. Let's suppose we were just having an example that the obese people are supposed to have more scores of depression and anxiety. So it was just for a single time that I collected all the obese ones. I monitored their scores for a single time, for a single reading, that their depression and anxiety score was supposed to be high or whatever it was. So because it was based on a single reading, it was a cross-sectional study. However, if I had to take the same study in a different way for a long period of time, that I say that the medical students have lower scores of depression and anxiety after the examination, have lowest in the mid session, and the depression anxiety starts to go up near the exam, and they have maximum during the exam, because it had to follow the depression and anxiety scores for several months, for a year maybe, and it required multiple observations and multiple readings. That is why we call this particular study design, which we are having or conducting for a longer period of time, usually for more than 6 months, as a cohort one. Then the major subdivisions which we have got comparisons. We compare what were the scores we had at week 1, what were the scores we had at week 2, what were the scores we had at week 3. So the other important study design which we have got, whether in the cohort division or the cross-sectional one, is comparative design. And then we have got correlation. For example, as the waist-hip ratio is going up, so are the scores of depression and anxiety, a direct correlation. As the waist-hip ratio and BMI is going up, the academic score is going down, a negative correlation. So two important things, or the tests which we apply in the medical researches, are cohort or else cross-sectional, and within them, either the cross-sectional, either the comparative ones or else the correlational ones. Ji, Dr. Zishan.
Yes, sir. Thank you. One more question. Zishan Siddiqui. So what is importance of research in USMLE steps?
When I talk about my years of undergraduate studies, in those years, the undergrad research was not that important because the competition at the postgrad level was not too high. But whenever you're going to graduate in the current era, and you're going to compete with the medical students of the private sector also, who generally these days have got more marks, and you're going to apply at foreign matching tests, whether it is through PLAB or MLE or through Australian exam or through the Canadian exam, uh, every research work gives you certain marks. It adds to your CV and it makes your chances of a match either within the country or in the post-grad examination more likely. So if you do not have a research work, your chances of competing at the national and the international exams once you have graduated are far less as compared to those which you are going to which are going to have a particular research work on their credit. As I do tell you that for each research work within your country, you get 2.5 marks in the postgrad, which is a huge benefit because it is going to save you working in the periphery for like 1.5 years or 2 years. Exactly. If you have got a viable research project which was published in a viable journal which is accepted by the HEC, the body which basically regulates all our foreign criteria and equivalences. So if it is accepted by the HEC and you have got published over there, your chances are far more as compared to those who did not have it on their credit. So of course it adds these particular days. It's of absolute importance if you want to compete postgraduate level within the country and without also.
No, and I echo that aspect, especially with the USMLE and coming to United States. And I agree that when, especially in US, and because I teach medical students here in US, and yeah, during their student year, they are involved in a lot of projects. And when you are applying to US, so basically you are competing, not only applicants from Pakistan, from India, from other, but also medical graduates who are from, graduating from US. And when you are thinking of, applying to US, I think it's not only your scores, but usually, depending on the specialty, but there are 4 or 5 things that they are looking. One is your clinical, one is your, the USMLE scores, your clinical work, your leadership, your teaching, and publications. And publication can also come in posters, in presentation, and also, the publication, and again, the teaching. So a lot of things that you can do. So USMLE, definitely you will take it in 4th year, final year, but teaching opportunities, volunteer opportunities, in the community, in the Nishtar different societies, and then the research opportunities, which luckily, we have on premises now because of, the underkind supervision of Dr. Hamid Hassan. So I think, yeah, utilize all these opportunities, and the other thing is, utilize it as a way to learn. The same analogy that I think Dr. Hamid Hassan gave before, the outcome will come automatically. So just use it, that you are doing it to learn, and things will get better. Your publications will come, and that will automatically, boost your resume and your chances to advance your career. Okay, so those, I think we are already, almost 1.5 hours, and I don't see any question in the chat. Let me just quickly see if there is any hand. Okay, one more came. Okay, so, okay. So I think that is it for today. And again, we are really grateful for your mentorship, for your, for your supervision, and disseminating so much knowledge and providing, so much support, and your approachability and availability, and your time today, on the weekend to share all those knowledge, and also your collaboration with Nishtar Research Council and on a lot of other projects. So we are really lucky to have you, on ground. And I would also encourage, our medical students to please subscribe to our Nishtar Research Council YouTube page, where we are doing monthly webinars, mostly building some research skills. And also, we have, the Nishtar Alumni of North America, we have Facebook page. So if you have any question, concern, please reach out to us. If anything we can help you, some guidance or anything, we're happy to do that. With that, thank you again for you, Sir Dr. Hamid Hassan, and your team. And I congratulate everyone who are part of the project, and good luck to everyone who are in the journey. It may seem slow, it may seem daunting, but with your good effort, with good mentorship, you can, as I think Dr. Hamid mentioned, Dr. Hamid Hassan mentioned that if his students, 4 or 5 students who just started in first year and were able to finish it, if they can do it, I think you can also do it. So thank you again.
I'm humbled. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot from me and my team. It was an honor, I must say.
Thank you, sir.